Aya! Welcome!
This isn't Jimmy's channel. Get out of here, Jimmy.
And the tag challenge is what I've titled Music Milestones. So there are 4 separate milestones, and the object is to pick an album, preferably. It can be on any format: CD, vinyl, record, cassette, 8-track, mini disc, whatever, and just show that from your collection, and it was released, at least originally, in the year in which corresponds to the tag. So pretty simple, I think.
Music is a massive part of my life and has been for a long time. It's something I don't really post or talk about on my YouTube that much, but well, my pride and joy is the Epiphone Explorer behind me. I've played guitar in bands, I've played bass in bands really badly, and then I've sung, screamed and whatever else in bands. I gave up playing about 5-6 years ago maybe, just because of work and family commitments, but I was quite fortunate that I got to tour quite a bit. I got to tour with other bands while they were touring, and then I'd help them set up equipment or sell t-shirts. Most of the time I ended up just getting drunk instead. But music's been massive for me since I was a kid. So I'll get Jimmy to read the questions out and then I'll answer them.
There is the year you were born.
So I was born in 1981, and I personally don't think the 80s were a great era for music. Luckily for me, Iron Maiden Killers was released in 1981, so this was my go-to album. Oh, I should be holding vinyls up, but they're in the garage in a box somewhere because I don't have a vinyl player. My CDs are just stacked in a corner there. Killers was the second album by Iron Maiden, and it was released on the 2nd of February 1981 on EMI Records. This was the first album with guitarist Adrian Smith, and the final album with original vocalist Paul Di'Anno. He was fired basically for his alcohol and cocaine addiction, and his on-stage performances suffering because of it. So the tracks on the album were The Ides of March, which is an instrumental, Wrathchild, which is still one of my favourite Iron Maiden tracks today, Murders in a Rue Morgue, Another Life, Genghis Khan, which is another instrumental, Innocent Exile, the title track Killers, Prodigal Son, Purgatory and Drifter. I loved this album. I was aware of it very young because I had an uncle that was into Guns N' Roses, Iron Maiden, AC/DC, Motorhead. My dad was into a lot of metal and heavy rock bands, so I was introduced to this quite early. The album cover always sticks out in my mind as being like up there with the first album covers I remember, along with some Michael Jackson, because everyone loved Michael Jackson in the 80s. But I remember this album cover being a young child and thinking how cool it was. So that's the year I was born.
The year you started school.
Year I went to school. If I'm primary school, that would be 1986, I think. I can't remember. But if 1986 was the year I went to school, then one of my all-time favourite albums was released in this year, and it is Metallica, Master of Puppets. What to say about it? It was released on Elektra Records and was the last album to feature bassist Cliff Burton, who sadly died in a bus accident in Sweden on the tour for this album. The album artwork was designed by Metallica and Peter Mensch. Metallica toured this album with Ozzy Osbourne, supporting Ozzy Osbourne. This album actually peaked on the Billboard at number 29. It wouldn't be unfair to say that this album is considered one of the greatest metal albums of all time, and it's definitely in my top sort of 5, maybe 10 albums, probably top 5. It is my favourite Metallica album, Master of Puppets. It's just, it didn't sound like anything else I'd heard, and I heard this really young again because of my uncle. Track list for Master of Puppets is Battery. It starts off with this really beautiful acoustic intro, and then the song absolutely smashes you in the face. Just an amazing track. And then Master of Puppets, to me, the actual title track, ups the ante again, and this is like an 8.5 minute track, and it's stunning. Then you've got the thing that should not be, Welcome Home, Sanitarium, another firm favourite, Disposable Heroes, Leper Messiah, Orion, and Damage Inc. Just a phenomenal album, and it this sort of brought heavier music to sort of the mainstream, and I absolutely love this album. I love every track on there. There's nothing I would skip through. It's a piece of history and a piece of music, a collection of songs that inspired me as a musician, inspired me as an artist, inspired me in everything I do. It was just, you could be different and create something unique.
The year you left school, graduated school, however you want to say it.
I left school in 1997, and this album was massive for me. I was a massive fan of sort of Korn, Metallica, and I'd heard the Deftones' first album and I loved it, and then Around the Fur came out, and it was just something else to me. It was so atmospheric and moody. This is one of the very few albums that I can pick up a guitar and I can play this album beginning to end. They were lumped in with the new metal movement, and there are a lot of new metal elements to it, but they were definitely more of an alternative metal band. And I loved Chino Moreno's vocals. I think the melodies, the sort of almost depressing sounds that the band made with like these Chino's haunting vocals, just absolutely brilliant album. And there was a lot of good albums out in 1997, In Flames Horacle being one of them, but I think this edges it out more because I remember this album more. I had quite a large circle of friends. We all had sort of dreadlocks or long hair and wearing our cut-off denim jackets with patches on it, combat trousers. I mean, really big combat trousers because Bernies and stuff were the craze then. And this was sort of one album that we all agreed on, and it also featured Max Cavalera from Sepultura and Soulfly singing on a song called Head Up that I covered probably about 7-8 years ago in another band. In fact, Soulfly was named after, the Soulfly band was named after that song that Max sang on. So the track listing, My Own Summer, Shove It, absolutely massive song. I think it broke the mainstream charts. It was on in every rock club you could go to, and yeah, I was underage, but I could get into rock clubs now and again. Labia, Mascara, Around the Fur, Rickets. My favourite song off this album, Be Quiet and Drive Far Away. One of the few songs I can play and sing at the same time, and I absolutely love that song. Lotion, Die the Flu, Head Up featuring Max Cavalera, and MX. MX is like a 4 or 5 minute track, and then it's followed by 2 hidden tracks, one being called Bong Hit. What was the other one? Damone? I think the other one was called Damone. This album is just so atmospheric, and it sums up a good period in my life where I just left school and I'd started playing guitar, I'd started shouting and screaming and singing in bands, and this music was accessible yet really heavy and full of attitude that us sort of kids that were born in the 80s, there was just something about this band that people of my age all gravitated towards, or metalheads gravitated towards, because the other side of the coin was the ravers and they hated this sort of thing. But I absolutely loved this album.
And the year you turned 21 years of age.
So I turned 21 in 2002, and new metal had started to die off, and guitar powered bands were coming back in. Metalcore was starting to become a thing. It hadn't quite reached the mainstream yet, and this album came out. It's called Alive or Just Breathing. It's by Killswitch Engage, and it's definitely my top 3 albums of all time. This album, again, it didn't sound like anything else that I'd heard. This album was heavy. It was really heavy, but there was so much intricate talent in the guitar playing. Jesse's vocals, he could sing, he could shout, he could do these wonderful things with his voice, but he always sounded like he was in pain, and it always sounded like it was painful what he was doing with his voice. And he was one of the first vocalists I'd ever heard doing what's called vocal frying. I don't know how to describe it, but it's something that I can do without losing my voice, and it's something I've done in bands for 20 years. And this was sort of the first band that had introduced that to me. And this was a landmark album for metalcore. These were the pioneers of it. And the other thing is, despite what I've just said about Jesse sounding like he's in pain when he's singing, that album and the lyrics are all positive. The intention of the album was to bring a positive message through music. Just after this album was released, Jesse Leach left the band for personal issues and health issues. But he came back to the band over 10 years later, and he was replaced by a singer called Howard Jones, who was phenomenal. He was an even better singer and screamer. But then Jesse came back, and I was like, he's not going to be able to hold the torch to Howard, and was every bit as good, if not better. And they've even done a track together on the newest album. Like, half the reason I love this album is because I can pick up my guitar and I cannot play a single song off this album from beginning to end. I can't play even some of the riffs. I can't play. I'm not a good guitarist by any stretch. I can do the basics. I can power chord and riff, but in regards to solos and scales, I never learned. I was learning, and then as soon as I discovered that I could scream and shout like these guys, I gave up guitar. So the track listing: Numbered Days, Self-Revolution, Fixation on the Darkness, My Last Serenade, which is still a club anthem. You go to a rock or a metal club, this track will be played. And Fixation in the Darkness, Life to Lifeless, Just Barely Breathing, To the Sons of Man, Temple from Within, The Element of One, Vide Infra, Without a Name, which is an instrumental track, which is outstanding. You need to listen to that. Rise Inside. As I said, this is in my top 3 albums ever. If I had to do a top 3 albums, Vulgar Display of Power by Pantera would be top. This would be second, and third would be Slipknot, Iowa. I know that's not everyone's cup of tea when it comes to metal, but it's my list. Obviously, Jimmy Barnes, I pasted segments of his original video in here instead of me repeating what he said. I'll leave links for him in the description down below. There'll be images of him and links, what have you. Go check the guy out, and then if you do fancy doing this challenge, do it. Not only tag myself, but tag Jimmy Barnes in this as well, because the guy, he adores music. I mean, he adores it. The guy's record collection, what I've seen through videos and stuff, the guy lives and breathes music as much as we do our collecting of pops, toys and whatever else. And he's a really nice guy. Go check out Jimmy. Please do your own sort of version of this list. Post it, tag myself, tag Jimmy. If you can't tag Jimmy, I'll tag him for you, let him know where the videos are. I'll share your videos in our group, because I think this is, being YouTubers, we get tagged in tag videos all the time, and it's always the same questions about Funko Pops, it's always the same questions about your comic books, your movies, and This seemed a bit more specific to certain years, and this is definitely a tag quiz for people with a love of music like I have. To end the video, there it is, my pride and joy. There's my Epiphone Goth Black Explorer. Stuck a Defiled sticker on there when I met the Defiled some years ago. It's got the nice inlay on there. We also have a bit of a battered drum kit, guitar, PA, speakers, more guitars. Yeah. So yeah, I brought my gimbal so I've got to hold my phone now, but that was my Jimmy Barnes musical tag challenge, and quick look at our music room because we're all musicians in the house. Mrs. Geek plays piano, the kids play drums, guitar, piano. It's a noisy house. So like, comment, share, subscribe, go check out Jimmy's channel, tag as many people as you want. Let's get this sort of tag challenge out there. A tag challenge, I think, with a bit of substance. Thank you for tuning in. Goodbye. So to end the video, I just broke my fucking gimbal.